Yes, good afternoon. My name is Sima Luipert. I am an advisor to the Nama Traditional Leaders Association, advising them on issues of genocide and reparations. I want to thank the hosts for inviting me to say something about green hydrogen production in Namibia. But I want to talk a little bit here about how hydrogen production, the way it is being implemented and plays itself out, how it perpetuates colonial injustices. In 1884, the German colonization and the subsequent genocide devastated Nama people's political and social structures and left many of these traditional communities faced with cultural erasure. Shortly after his arrival in Great Namakwa land on the 1st of May 1883, Adolf Ludritz's company signed a fraudulent treaty with the Nama leader Joseph Friedrich, transferring land rights to Ludritz. This so-called Meilenschwindel laid the foundation for the following colonization of indigenous territories by the German Empire. More similar treaties followed, which gave German settlers and a lot of the German businesses access to exploit resources from the ancestral Nama land. The area around Ludritz was later transferred to at the height of the genocide actually, was later transferred to the German South West Africa Company, also known as the Deutsche Colonialgesellschaft for Südwest Africa. And these included rights to explore and to exploit the territory for mining activities. So really the legal framework for land dispossession of Nama people by German colonizers was based on a series of colonial decrees that were issued by German authorities, and notable amongst these were the 1905 land expropriation measures, which allowed for the confiscation of indigenous land as state property. In 1907, settler ordinances and indigenous land seizures, which declared large portions of indigenous land as state land and restricted Nama and Ovaherero access. And then there was also the 1913 land law, which further consolidated land confiscations, permanently, restricting indigenous land ownership. Following the extermination from 1904 onwards against the Nama and the Ovaherero people, about 50% and more of the entire Nama people died during that period. I think to a larger extent, the Nama people were never really able to recover from this great loss of its members to such an extent that it now forms a ethnic minority in Namibia. Efforts to rebuild after independence and after the genocide and the departure of German colonizers were hindered by the establishment of native reserves, which forcefully removed indigenous communities from their territories during the British control and also following occupation by South African apartheid regime. After Namibian independence, the Nama leaders sort of tried to start, restoring their people's dignity and the culture and the heritage through the Nama Traditional Leaders Association. And I think what is also important to mention is following the Diamond Rush, in which Germany played and German companies and German banks played a very critical role, parts of the then Great Namaqua land were declared as the Speergebied, or a diamond restricted area. And it was declared as such by the German colonizers, accompanied by the forced and violent displacement and genocide of Nama people. And so since 1908, this area has been accessible only with special permits for tourism and economic activity, but not to the public. In 2008, without proper consultations taking place, the same area was converted into a national park, now called the Tsauqai National Park because of its unique biodiversity. And so because of this historical context, the Hyphen project in Namibia builds on and equally, I believe, but perpetuates historical injustices. And this raises very, very serious concerns. Ammonia will be produced on this land, which was violently taken from people, and which led to generations of dispossession and marginalization. I think to a large extent also, in a way, the project legitimizes the original illegal transfer of ancestral Nama land. And it also permanently erases any prospect for addressing the generational injustice that is being perpetuated on the Nama people. It continues a legacy of extraction that has systematically and systemically excluded and impoverished Nama communities. And I think, when we think about these projects and when we think about hydrogen production, these are factors that are not even being considered at all. And I think proceeding without addressing these concerns would be to participate in yet another chapter of exploitation and annihilation, leaving the Nama people without their rightful access to the benefits derived from their ancestral lands, just as they have never benefited in any meaningful or useful way, that they have never benefited from the diamond industry. And it is on that, on this same land that we are now talking about a new, different industry, which is the hydrogen industry. But we are not talking about land dispossession and the historical facts around how this land was dispossessed. And so when you talk to a lot of people who actually know this historical background, people are asking, but how do we as descendants of people who suffered from German colonialism, how do we benefit from this? That discussion is not on the table at all. So yeah, I think Hyphen, needs to be in close discussion with Nama communities and the leaders of these communities. And there needs to be a sense of justice, because you cannot continue inheriting injustice from generation to generation. I think this is, I think also international conventions that are ratified by both Germany and Namibia recognize the right of indigenous people to self-determination, which consists of the right to freely determine and pursue their economic, social, and cultural development, and also the concept of free prior informed consent. That is a human rights norm that is grounded in the fundamental rights to self-determination. And these are guaranteed by several instruments the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, the International Covenant on the Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination. And I think we also need to remember that in 2007, the United Nations General Assembly adopted the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, making specific mention of free, prior, informed consent as a prerequisite for any activity that affects indigenous communities. And I think these obligations on the part of states also applies to Namibia. And we know how Germany is investing in this hydrogen production. That Germany has a keen interest in this hydrogen, that ammonia be exported to Germany. So there are economic interests here, German economic interests. There are also German political interests because of the genocide. Germany does not want to refer to it as genocide and talks about some sort of special relationship with Namibia, forgetting that it has committed a genocide on what is today Namibia. And so Germany has an obligation to ensure that there is free, prior, informed consent, to ensure that historical injustices are not being perpetuated. Yeah, I think I shall stop there, just by concluding that the legal framework for land dispossession of Nama people by German colonizers was based on a series of colonial decrees that were issued by German authorities. And notable amongst these were the 1907 and 1913 Settler Ordinance and the Land Law of 1913, which passed indigenous Nama ancestral land and made it state property. And no justice has been achieved from this huge loss of the Nama people. So I think it's really important that our government, the Green Hydrogen Council, and Hyphen, they need to take into consideration due diligence measures, and ensuring the Hyphen project respects the right of Nama people, specifically with relation to the Tsaukaip National Park, and that such structural adjustments are made to ensure that historical injustices are not being perpetuated. Thank you. That's my contribution. Thank you.